India, once known as the Golden Bird, possessed immense wealth before British rule. This wealth was not just in the form of gold and precious stones, but also in its rich culture, advanced knowledge systems, and flourishing trade routes that connected it to the rest of the world. From the Mughal Empire to regional kingdoms, India thrived on its resources and craftsmanship. The Mughal era in particular was marked by a blend of Persian, Indian, and various other influences, creating a unique and prosperous society. Regional kingdoms, each with their own specialties, contributed to a diverse and vibrant economy. This prosperity attracted European powers, leading to the establishment of British colonialism. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, and finally the British all sought to tap into India's wealth. The British, through a combination of military might and strategic alliances, eventually established their dominance. The British East India Company, initially a trading venture, gradually gained political control, marking the beginning of a long period of exploitation. They used various tactics, including manipulation of local rulers, to expand their influence and control over Indian territories. This essay will delve into the mechanisms and consequences of British wealth extraction from India. The British systematically dismantled India's traditional economic structures, imposing policies that favored British industries at the expense of Indian livelihoods. The British Raj, spanning over 2 centuries, had a profound impact on India's economic trajectory. The introduction of railways, telegraphs, and other infrastructure was often touted as beneficial, but these were primarily designed to serve British economic interests. While British apologists often highlight the infrastructure and institutions they introduced, the true cost of their rule remains a subject of intense debate. The economic policies implemented by the British led to widespread poverty, famines, and a significant decline in traditional industries. This essay will examine the various facets of this economic exploitation, drawing upon historical evidence and diverse perspectives. We will explore how the British drained India's wealth, the impact on Indian society, and the resistance movements that emerged in response to colonial policies. By understanding this history, we can better appreciate the complexities of India's colonial past and its lasting legacy. The East India Company arrived in India in the 17th century, seeking trading opportunities. Initially, they focused on spices, textiles, and other valuable commodities. However, their ambitions soon grew beyond commerce. Exploiting political instability and military superiority, the company gradually asserted its dominance over various Indian states. The Battle of Plassey in 1757 marked a turning point, granting the company control over Bengal, one of the wealthiest regions in India. This victory transformed the company from merchants to rulers. They began collecting taxes, raising armies, and establishing administrative structures. This transition marked the beginning of systematic economic exploitation. The company's focus shifted from fair trade to maximizing revenue extraction, often through coercive means. This period laid the groundwork for the subsequent drain of wealth from India. The drain theory, articulated by Indian nationalist leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, describes the systematic transfer of wealth from India to Britain during colonial rule. This theory was a cornerstone in the arguments against British imperialism, highlighting the economic exploitation that underpinned colonial rule. Naoroji, often referred to as the Grand Old Man of India, meticulously documented how British policies were designed to extract wealth from India, leaving the country impoverished. This drain took various forms, including the siphoning off of tax revenue. The British imposed heavy taxes on Indian peasants and landowners, often without regard for their ability to pay. These taxes were collected with ruthless efficiency, ensuring a steady flow of money to Britain. The tax system was designed to benefit the British economy at the expense of the Indian populace, leading to widespread poverty and hardship. The exploitation of Indian resources without adequate compensation was another significant aspect of this drain. India's rich natural resources, including cotton, tea, and minerals, were extracted and exported to Britain. The British established monopolies over these resources, paying Indian producers minimal prices while selling the finished products at high profits in international markets. This exploitation extended to labor as well, with Indian workers toiling in harsh conditions for meager wages. Additionally, the imposition of unfavorable trade policies further exacerbated the economic drain. The British enforced policies that restricted Indian industries and promoted British goods. Indian textiles, once renowned worldwide, were heavily taxed, while British textiles flooded the Indian market. This led to the decline of traditional Indian industries and increased dependency on British imports. These policies ensured that India's wealth flowed into British coffers, fueling industrialization and prosperity in the metropole. The wealth extracted from India played a crucial role in financing Britain's industrial revolution, leading to advancements in technology and infrastructure. Meanwhile, India remained trapped in a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. One of the most glaring examples of this drain was the home charges. These were annual payments made by the colonial government in India to the British Treasury, ostensibly for administrative expenses and military protection. However, these charges were often exorbitant and unjustified, serving as a direct transfer of wealth from India to Britain. These payments covered the salaries and pensions of British officials, the cost of maintaining British troops in India, and other administrative expenses. The burden of these charges fell on the Indian economy, draining resources that could have been used for development and welfare. However, these charges were often exorbitant and unjustified, draining India's resources and hindering its development. The financial strain imposed by the home charges left little room for investment in infrastructure, education, or healthcare, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. This continuous outflow of wealth crippled India's economy, leaving it impoverished and underdeveloped. The economic policies of the British colonial administration were designed to benefit Britain at the expense of India, creating a legacy of economic disparity and hardship that persisted long after independence. The drain theory remains a powerful reminder of the economic exploitation that characterized colonial rule and its lasting impact on India's development. Section 4. Taxation under the Raj, extracting revenue, stifling growth. The British colonial administration implemented a heavy-handed taxation system in India. This system, designed to maximize revenue collection, placed an immense burden on the Indian peasantry. Land revenue, in particular, was levied at exorbitant rates, often exceeding 50% of the harvest. This left farmers with little to invest in their land or improve their livelihoods. Moreover, the British introduced new taxes on essential commodities like salt, further exacerbating the plight of the poor. This relentless taxation, coupled with the lack of investment in agriculture and infrastructure, crippled India's rural economy. The British focus on revenue extraction came at the expense of rural development, perpetuating poverty and hindering economic growth. Section 5. The Bengal Famine, a man-made catastrophe. The Bengal famine of 1770 stands as a chilling testament to the devastating consequences of British economic policies in India. This tragic event, which unfolded over several years, was marked by widespread starvation, disease, and death. The famine was not merely a result of natural calamities, but was significantly worsened by the actions and inactions of the British colonial rulers. This famine, which claimed millions of lives, was not simply a natural disaster, but a man-made catastrophe exacerbated by colonial policies. The British administration's focus on revenue generation and profit maximization led to a series of decisions that had catastrophic consequences for the local population. The prioritization of cash crops over food crops, the imposition of heavy taxes, and the lack of effective relief measures all contributed to the severity of the famine. The East India Company's relentless pursuit of profit led to the overcultivation of cash crops like indigo and opium, neglecting food production. These cash crops were highly profitable for the company, but did nothing to feed the local population. Instead, they occupied vast tracts of fertile land that could have been used to grow food. The focus on these non-food crops left the region vulnerable to food shortages, especially when natural disasters like droughts or floods occurred. Furthermore, the company's monopoly over grain trade and its refusal to provide adequate relief measures exacerbated the crisis. The British authorities controlled the grain markets and set prices that were often too high for the local population to afford. When the famine struck, the company was slow to respond and failed to distribute food and resources effectively. Their policies were driven by economic interests rather than humanitarian concerns, leading to widespread suffering and death. Even as millions perished, the company continued to export grain from Bengal, prioritizing profits over human lives. Ships laden with rice and other grains left the ports of Bengal, bound for markets in Europe and other parts of the British Empire. This export of essential foodstuffs during a time of extreme scarcity highlighted the callousness and greed of the colonial administration. The suffering of the local population was ignored in favor of maintaining trade and profit margins. The Bengal famine serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of colonial exploitation and the callous disregard for Indian lives. It underscores the devastating impact of policies that prioritize economic gain over human welfare. The famine left deep scars on the region, both in terms of the immediate loss of life and the long-term social and economic consequences. It remains a poignant example of the dangers of unchecked colonial power and the importance of compassionate governance.